Tom VanHaaren, ESPN, is our guest now. Tom, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Glad to have you back on the show. And Tom does a great job covering recruiting for ESPN. And what a time it is in recruiting now, Tom. And I'm surprised. I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised how well these coaches are doing this virtual recruiting, and they're still getting guys to commit to the school.
Yeah, it's been pretty interesting to watch it, especially with the dead period that's going on, the created dead period by the NCAA. There's been no in-person communication, no visits, unofficial or official. And, I think from talking to some coaches and talking to some other people around recruiting, I think the coaches that are best at building relationships and actually having a connection with the recruits, I think you're seeing those guys rise to the top right now, and that's what they have to rely on.
Tom, when you look at some surprise teams at the top of the ratings there, you've got North Carolina, Tennessee. Now, they've got some history, obviously, with their programs, but they have really done a nice job during this recruiting cycle of getting key guys in really out of places that aren't within their own state.
Yeah, Tennessee especially, I think, looking at what Tennessee's been able to do outside of the state of Tennessee, it's been pretty impressive. Some of these prospects, I actually tweeted something out today about schools that have landed ESPN 300 commitments just from March until now, and Tennessee is near the top of the list. And you go down the list of guys, the elite prospects that they have. They got a 5-star linebacker in Terrence Lewis out of Florida. They got Dylan Brooks, who's the number 1 ranked prospect in Alabama. They've got Julian Nixon out of Georgia. So they've gone into some highly contested areas, and they've had some success. And I think Tennessee is a school that I would put in the category of what I just mentioned with good relationship builders. I spoke with someone from Tennessee yesterday about this, and I said, what's different for you guys this year, this cycle? And it just seemed like they're taking advantage of this time rather than dwelling on it and saying we can't get guys on campus. They're taking advantage of it, and their recruiting ability and who they are, I think, is sticking out to a lot of prospects. They're saying, I'm comfortable with this school, I'm comfortable with these coaches, and I'm going to commit.
Tom VanHaaren from ESPN talking recruiting here on Hanging with Hester. I want to go national one more time before we bring things back to LSU. Tom, and talk about USC. The entire West Coast is really struggling in terms of national relevance, in terms of getting to the playoff and competing for championships. And we used to be able to count on USC to do that from that side of the country. With Clay Helton there, it just hasn't been going very well in the recruiting landscape. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. I mean, I was looking at the recruiting rankings recently, and you can go back to the 2017 and 2018 classes and look at where USC was ranked. They were ranked number 5 in 2017, and then they were ranked number 7 in 2018. And then fast forward to the last recruiting cycle, the 2020 class, USC was ranked 54th, which is incredible. I mean, it's unheard of for them to be ranked that low. And I think a big part of that is it was the instability with Clay Helton, with his position, if he was coming back. It was the performance on the field. It was the surge that Oregon has had with Mario Cristobal and the effort that they've put in to recruit the state of California. I think all of that combined, it kind of created this perfect storm, a bad storm for USC. And I wrote an article on this recently that they're now USC is now trying to take back the West in recruiting, and they're making a concerted effort to really focus on the West and those prospects and keeping a lot of the elite prospects home. And so far, it's been working in 2021. They're off to a way better start this year than they are last year. So I think they're headed in the right direction. But one of the main questions I had for Clay Helton, who I'll give him credit, he was very honest in his answers for me with this story. He said the last piece for them is to put it together on the field, that they need to put it all together and actually produce on the field. It's not showing recruits that it can work. You're just selling them on something, and that's what they've got to do is show them.
Well, let's bring things back to Baton Rouge here and talk about the defending national champions and how things are faring on the recruiting trail. Garrett Nussmeier is the biggest name that has been dropped in this class thus far, the quarterback from over in Texas, the most recent add to LSU's class. I know you guys at ESPN are high on Garrett Nussmeier.
Absolutely, he's a coach's kid. His dad, Doug, is with the Cowboys. He was a coach in college football for a number of years. And we were talking about Tennessee going out of state. I think LSU, you can throw them into that conversation as well. They went and got Garrett out of Texas. They got JoJo Earl, an athlete, probably wide receiver, out of Texas. Landon Jackson, a defensive end, out of Texas. They went into Georgia, into California. So they've done a tremendous job as well. And with Garrett especially, I always, with quarterbacks, I always like to look at a couple of recruiting classes, because you're really trying to stock your quarterback room so that there's no holes in any class. When you see a team miss out on a quarterback one year, it can be pretty detrimental. So landing Garrett in this class and then adding him into what they landed in the last cycle with Max Johnson and TJ Finley, I'm pretty impressed with the guys that they're adding to the quarterback room and the depth that they're building at that position.
Tom, it does seem like they're kind of, getting a mold that they like as far as quarterback recruits, going to get Joe Burrow, a coach's son, getting Max Johnson, whose dad played a long time in the NFL, and he grew up around football, Garrett Nussmeier, something we talked about yesterday. Do you think that is now their recruiting plan, or it just happened to play out that way?
I think it's a little bit of both. They had some other targets that I think they were really high on. Caleb Williams was one who has LSU in his top three, but it looks like Oklahoma is probably the leader for him right now. So I think it's a little bit of both. They're targeting guys that you want someone that is mentally tough, that understands the game, that has a high football IQ, and this from being around the game. A lot of those guys sometimes are coaches' sons. Just growing up in that atmosphere and understanding the game, it can help at that position. So I don't know that they're specifically targeting only coaches' sons, but I do think they're looking at the mental makeup, the type of person that he is, and looking at someone as a potential leader. You just had Joe Burrow, and he's probably the prime example of what you want mentally. So you kind of have a blueprint there of what you want, and then you go find that on the recruiting trail.
Tom VanHaaren of ESPN is our guest here on Hanging with Hester. Tom, you're on the recruiting trail. You hear all the buzz. Right now, we've always known that after you had that special run, you had that national title run, it's not necessarily that year's recruiting that gets affected. It's that next year recruiting class. And so has LSU kind of became the cool kid on the block with everything they were able to do last year, not only on the field, but, off the field, the hype videos and everything they put out there on social media. Has LSU's buzz picked up a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it just changes things for you on the recruiting trail. Where like I said with USC, you're not selling something anymore. You're showing people things, and I think a lot of times people forget that this isn't the pros where you can have a lengthy career and you've got time, or you're a free agent and you can go after 3 years with this team, you can go choose another team. These are college kids who a lot of times only have 3 to 4 years to accomplish their goal. And if you haven't developed players to get to the NFL, if you haven't made it to the playoffs, if you haven't won a national championship, you're selling to these elite prospects that you're gonna try to do it, or they're gonna be the first to do it. So for LSU now, it's funny to me because just a few, even a year and a half ago, we were really talking way differently about LSU and Ed Orgeron, and if this was going to work, if it's going to work out, to now where they have a national championship under their belt, and the conversations that they're able to have with recruits and families is completely different, because now they have a blueprint. They have the ability to show them, here's all of our NFL draft picks, here's my championship ring, and if you want to come do it again, we know how to do it.
Tom, with the news over the last couple of weeks about the changes coming in college athletics with name, image, and likeness, and players' ability to capitalize on that during their college years, how do you think that affects recruiting? I realize that's a very general question. You can kind of take it anywhere you want, but how do you think the name, image, and likeness changes that are coming affects recruiting?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and the big picture answer is that we don't know yet, and I'll throw in some guesses and some opinions here. But talking to a lot of coaches, first of all, on their level, I think a lot of them they don't know enough about it yet. They don't know how it could be used, how they could use it to their advantage. Part of the proposal is that it's not supposed to be used as a recruiting tool, but that everything is always a recruiting tool, so it's going to end up that way. But coaches, I think, are still trying to figure out what exactly it means, what they could do with it. But for me, I don't see it as widening the gap and creating a bigger gap for the major programs in recruiting, because we already have that gap. Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, those top programs are getting the top kids anyways. So I actually kind of view it in a different light, that maybe it offers opportunity for some of the top tier programs to get some of these elite prospects. Georgia Tech is a school that comes to mind, where Jeff Collins and his staff have already used a lot of branding and marketing and in their recruiting pitch. And I think this is probably an opportunity for them to say, hey, you've got an opportunity to build your brand here, and we'll help you build that brand, which will in turn get you more sponsorship deals and get you your money for your name, image, and likeness. So I think there's actually some opportunity there. And I think, Jacob, I think that this is going to be the next arms race in recruiting, that the marketing branch or the branding branch of college programs. I think we're going to really see a surge in that, in how programs pitch to kids, that they're going to help brand themselves and push their marketing efforts out there.
All right, Tom, we'll get you out of here with this one. I'm going to ask you to reach far back in your brain. I know you've already moved to the 2021 class, but going back to the 2020 class for LSU, which recruit should LSU fans be the most excited about?
Well, we did. Adam Rittenberg and I did a survey. It was over 60 coaches, and we asked them who they thought was the best prospect in the class overall that they saw. And Eric Gilbert, the tight end out of Georgia, came out more than any other prospect. That guy, he's 6'6", 255 pounds. He runs like a wide receiver. He is so athletic. What he brings to that offense, I think, is going to be special, and I think he'll probably be playing pretty early.
I was surprised the first time I saw him in person. You see his height and his weight listed, but you're always like, okay, that's a little inflated. I don't think it's inflated in this case. He looks like an NFL guy that's coming back to train at LSU.
Absolutely, yeah. There's nothing inflated about him. He's going to go up and put up numbers in that offense, and that's always a good testament for me when you ask coaches after the fact, when there's nothing for them to gain, if they answer honestly, and they did, and they mention a guy like him, I think that there's some water to that. It holds some weight.
All right, he is Tom VanHaaren, does a fantastic job covering recruiting for ESPN. You can follow along him on Twitter at TomVH. Tom, we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Stay safe.